Hello, am I audible?
Yes,
You
you
are
are.
Katie.
Okay, yeah, great. So we'll start the session. A very good morning, good afternoon to all of you who are present today. I am Ketki Gokhale, founder of Atman Yoga Consultancy based in Solihull, UK. Welcome all of you in today's session. Today's session is very special for two reasons. First, today is Sanjivana Samadhi Day of great saint from Maharashtra, India, Sant Jnaneshwar. And on this auspicious day, we are fortunate to have our guest speaker, Shri Omkar Gotkhindikar, with us. I invite Omkar to join us. Welcome, Omkar.
Thank you, Ketki. Thank you. And good morning to all.
Yeah. Let me give you a brief introduction about Omkar. Omkar has done bachelor's and master's degree in yogic science from prestigious university S. Vyasa from Bangalore. He has 2 decades of experience in training and teaching yoga. He is loved and respected by his students, clients, and is known for gifts he brings to their personal and professional life as a yoga teacher, therapist, counselor, coach, and stress management consultant. Omkar travels widely conducting workshops, seminars, retreats on both philosophical and practical aspects of yoga, including meditation and guided relaxation. He is also a pranic and Reiki healer. He has a skill in explaining scriptural aspects in a very simple yet practical way. He teaches Bhagavad Gita, Patanjali Yoga Sutras, and Narada Bhakti Sutras through his wellness program modules in different schools, colleges, and IT sectors. Now, for last 3 months, we looked into various shlokas from Bhagavad Gita, focusing on Bhakti Yoga. We tried to understand different ways and principles of devotion. Bhakti is a pure form of expression that elevates our consciousness effortlessly. With time, the methods of bhakti might have changed. However, emotions remain the same. To explore this concept further, today Omkar is going to talk about relevance of concepts of bhakti in modern times. I think it's going to be really interesting. So now I request Omkar to take over and start with his talk.
Thank you. Thank you, Ketki Amok. Let me start with a prayer. And today is Sant Jnaneshwar's Sanjivana Samadhi. And I don't think throughout the world the Bhakti movement can be completed without mentioning of Sant Jnaneshwar. So let me start with a prayer. If you know this prayer, you can continue with me or just listen. I'll tell you the meaning definitely. वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुं मूकं करोति वाचालम् Pangum langhayate girim yat kripatamaham vande paramanandamadhavam namito yogi thora viragi tatvajnani santa to satkavivara parat paraguru Jnanadeva Bhagavanta. We pray to the Lord Krishna, Krishna whose contribution on the spiritual realm throughout the world is totally, what should I say, is beyond the words. Krishna who has who has taught the Bhagavad Gita, who has given us Bhagavad Gita, and whichever problems we face in the world, if you want to find the solutions, Bhagavad Gita is the best scripture one can relate to. You can come from any background, any kind of religion, any kind of country, any kind of society, but Bhagavad Gita gives us the what we call it as a, is there audio issue?
Will you go little behind so that your entire face will come in the camera?
Yeah, is it
Your
okay?
eyes and forehead. Yes, does.
Kit, you need to ask them to mute as well. Mute.
Yeah, and all of you, can you please mute your calls? Thank you.
Yeah, I hope it's clear now. So when we talk about the Bhagavad Gita, it gives the solutions. And that's why the first prayer was to the Lord Krishna. And the second prayer was to Jnaneshwar Mauli. I come from a state in India, Maharashtra, and I grew up in a place, Solapur, which is very close to the Pandharpur, and grew up in a family environment where the Varakari Sampradaya, where it is the branch of a bhakti movement in India, where the devotion towards the Panduranga, Vithala, and Rakumai is very much been adored, and Jnaneshwar Maharaj is the pioneer there. And so the prayer to the Jnaneshwar Mauli, who has done such amazing work. Bhagavad Gita has a 700 shlokas, but Jnaneshwari, which is written by Santa Jnaneshwar, has almost 9,000 shlokas. And it is all the journey to take you within. Not a single OV or the line of a Jnaneshwari goes without a context. So everything is connected to take us. And when we think of this, let me come to the today's topic. When we think of all of this, why do we need all this? Why do we need all this bhakti or even a yoga in a way? When we think of it, as a human being, wherever we come from, it is our nature to strive for the higher goal, to strive for the higher self, to reach to that higher self, to reach to that better consciousness. And to reach to that better consciousness as the humanity has progressed, they have tried to find out the various paths. The paths from form of the yoga, of in the yoga there are hatha, there is a Raja Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Ashtanga. You say there are various paths. And the basic idea is to find out the answer, who am I? How I am connected to that higher consciousness? Do I have a purpose in my life? And when I'm trying to find out the solution, I have to see my own qualities. As a human being, I'm gifted with a sense of intelligence, with a sense of emotions, with what we call as a will, or the what we call as a willpower to do, not to do, and how much to do. And another thing is what we call as action. We are blessed with all these aspects so that we grow on the path, we grow on this as a human. If we are not, we remain stagnant in the life, and a phase comes in a life where we start questioning the reason of our existence. And when I take my sessions in a corporate sectors and IT sectors, all youngsters are there, and people are working day and night with an extensive overload, with a lot of target-oriented programming, which is good. Having said that, you have a perks and benefits of it, which can be financial, which can be some kind of comforts in your life. But life becomes so monotonous and so stressful for these people, which we have seen, that after a certain age, they start questioning why they are doing it, what they are doing. And in that process, a lot of understanding which I have found, where when I take these meditation classes or the relaxation classes or the any kind of such a stress management workshop, that people have ignored the major aspect of their life, which is called emotion. When I say word emotion, people go to the only one, what you call the one end of it, where the anger, frustration, anxiousness, there is a rage, there is a jealousy, there is a competitiveness, which is in a negative form. These emotions they consider as emotion, and they forget the emotions like happiness, joy, unconditionalness, compassion, kindness, the positive aspect. So emotions if we don't give importance, when we don't understand them properly, there is a lot of trouble. Many youngsters, very young age. Recently, there was a workshop recently, due to lockdown, almost it is 8 months, but it was in January 2020 in a college in Bangalore where I had this 2 days workshop with friends and where we talked with these youngsters regarding the stress management for the exam purpose, how to handle when you have an examination. And poor kids were so troubled with the stress of the exams that only thing which they were in the family they were expressing is the anger, frustration, the rage. They're having those short anger bursts. And parents, they thought that this is very normal. In Hindi they say to hota hai. This is normal. That child is screaming on the parents, child is throwing tantrums. And okay, you have to understand, one has to understand this, that this happens only and only when the child has not understood to handle his or her own emotion, and similar way, parents have not shown them that path. How you can express your emotions correctly, how you can put them in a correct frame, correct words without throwing any tantrums or without throwing any kind of unnecessary scenes. Now, this we saw in in the children, but we see this in the corporate sector where people are 25, 30 and all, and some kind of small little pressure, some kind of pressure and a small little trouble, trigger. Suddenly, there is nervous breakdown. There is a lot of what we call rage. I mean, there are cases where people have gone for the physical violence for small little things. It's not that it happens in a one moment. It is a chronic build-up condition of a mind which is there in the current generation almost always. Now, was it there in the previous generation? Have you seen the parents, the grandparents, anywhere you come from? They have their own ways to handle emotion, and most of the emotions, if you see in India, the nurturing or the culturing the emotion was always in a positive way. There was always where from in that generation, from childhood, people used to do some kind of worship, some kind of devotion, some kind of devotional activities on and off. May not be every day, but on alternate days. In Maharashtra, we have a very simplest thing, which at this age, I always feel which is very much essential part of the life for all of it should be that every evening at near about 6:37, we used to lit a lamp in front of the God and we used to do a prayer called a Shubham Karoti. It's the simplest procedure, and every household have their own what you call favorite deity or the devotion and that particular prayer. It might be Ganesha, it might be Vishnu, it can be Vithala or Lakshmi, whichever. And the prayers used to be there. What was the idea? Was it just a ritual without it was it a mechanical ritual? No. If you see it, it is the process where you learn to surrender. And the Bhakti Yoga is that path of a surrender. You don't have to do anything very much what you call it as a extravaganza or anything grand. It can be simplest, humble thought that I am the instrument in this path in the hand of the divine. Now, this divine, when I talk about, let me be clear here that it can be a deity which we worship or deities which we worship. It's no issue. But if you don't believe in the form of the deity, because many people obviously question this, and if you know this, that even a Ramakrishna was tested by Swami Vivekananda. So if you don't believe on something, you have a freedom to test that aspect. You test. See, don't discard anything in the life just without testing. So if you don't believe in the concept of deity, because when you talk about the bhakti, this question is going to come for any one of us, that should I worship the deity or should I not have any pictorial or any sound form of the deity? What should I do? Should I do those rituals or not? Should I not do? I'll come to that point in an elaborate form. But at the beginning, let me tell you, Even if you don't believe in the deity form, any physical form of the deity or any pictorial form of the deity, it's okay. Do you believe in a divinity, in a goodness, in a consciousness? Do you believe in the kindness? These are the good qualities. And these qualities won't be in the asuras. These qualities won't be in the monsters. So these qualities obviously come from the human to the divine path. You know, you reach from this level of humanity to the next level, which is the divinity. And on that path, these qualities we have to nurture, we have to develop, we have to understand and learn and express. When I say this, one has to understand the surrender. As I said, divinity is the major quality. Divinity can be seen. You know, there are people who don't believe in the concept of the God, but they believe in their parents. They have devotion towards the parents. They have devotion towards the elderly or any supportive elderly person in their family. They have a devotion towards some kind of a guru, any kind of a path, a guru who is a true, who is showing them correct path. Remember, one has to always remember, this was told by Swami Purushottamananda from Ramakrishna Math in one of his lecture, that always remember, a guru is a human being in that robe, in that saffron or whichever robe it is. So a guru might have some or other negative quality, may not have. It's up to us. Having said that, you have a freedom to choose your guru. You have a freedom to understand that path of guided by that guru. You have a freedom to question that path. You know, one should not be blind follower of any guru or any kind of such branch of the devotion. And if you get benefit, it's good. If you feel that I'm contented with this, I should move on. You have a freedom to go for this to search of the next guru. Even a Dattatreya, who was such a yogi, Avadhuta, he had some 27 gurus. The guru is the one who shows the path. In a bhakti, the importance of the guru is most prominent. Why to worship guru? Because he is nothing but the one who has a key of the what we call treasure. What is a treasure? The divinity. A treasurer will open the treasure and give you whatever is there. That's the easiest way. That's why we have this concept of guru. It is essential to see this concept with a very neutral and clear mind, without any prejudice. You know, unfortunately, a lot of repulsion towards the path of bhakti, which I have seen in the youngsters, happens because they don't like the grandness or the extravaganza in this what we call the rituals. One has to understand that there is nowhere compulsion for anyone to do that. Even the Bhagavad Gita says that patram pushpam phalam toyam. Even the leaf, patram, pushpam, flower, fruit, and toyam means water. Even you offer this much also, he's happy with it. The divine is always happy with that whatever that offering is this. Mahabharata has this beautiful story when the Pandavas were in the Vanavasa and the Kauravas were troubling them. They were knowing that these people are in a Vanavasa. They were not yet in Ajnatavasa. So Ajnatavasa where they're totally out of any contact, and Vanavasa where they're in a jungle. So Durvasa was the Rishi who was supposed to be the most, having the temper. I mean, see, it's not a temper which is a weakness for him. It is that he seeks for the perfection. And that's why if there is no perfection, he gets angry. It's not that he's an angry person. Unfortunately, some people take it in that way, but we have to see these are the knowledgeable people. When you know that they are knowledgeable people, do you think they don't know that anger is a bad quality? They know it. It's that they seek for the perfection. A teacher, a guru, takes that freedom to get angry on the disciple or the student to make that student or the disciple perfect. Nothing else. It's not to harm the student. So Durvasa was told by this Kauravas, why don't you go here? There, these Pandavas are there, and You can have food, they will do your Adaratitya, they will take care of you and your Shish disciples. So Durvasa goes with a huge clan, and exactly that time Pandavas have finished their food. They have completed their lunch, and Durvasa comes and knocks the door, Bhiksham, they give me the food. So Draupadi is in attention. And Draupadi, obviously, when such a big jnani person comes, it is your duty and to take care of that person. So Draupadi says Durvasa says yes, and she goes in the kitchen. And I mean, see, there is a beauty when I'm going to come to this aspect. Why Draupadi is called as a Sakhi or Krishna is because she had this direct connection with the Krishna. The devotion of that Yajnaseni, which is Draupadi, was such a pure that whenever she wanted to connect to the Krishna, she was able to connect. It is, it's like a hotline. Nobody is going to interrupt there. The sadhana of that Draupadi was so pure that whenever she contemplated, she was able to connect to that energy of the Krishna. And when you understand this, Krishna obviously guided her. Krishna came there. And Krishna is obviously a bit notorious person, and notorious in a good way. He likes to even test his disciples. He likes to even test his friends. ऐसे ही free में कुछ नहीं होता है. He checks them. Even if you read Bhagavad Gita, you are doing the chanting, you know this, that there is always, in some chapters, you will see Krishna nicely tells Arjuna, do this, it is good for you, it will help you. In some chapters, he blasts him. What kind of weak person you are? You are an Arya, you should be strong. He gives then and there. In some places, he pacifies him. He tells him, you are the greatest warrior. What kind of example you are going to put? So even the divine is going to test the bhakta. Remember this when you are on the path of Bhakti Yoga. So Krishna, he smiles at the Draupadi and he says, give me the food. He's like, what? I have finished cooking. These people have come. Where should I give you food from? He said, check the vessel. She opens and she didn't have any, gold vessels or silver vessels and anything. She had an earthen pot. She opens it. There is only tulsi leaves are there. Couple of, some 2-3 tulsi leaves. She gives it to the Krishna. He eats it and he's trupta. He is very contented with it. And then she starts opening the vessels and it seems the food starts appearing there. And the story continues with that. A devotee, when he offers even the simplest leaf or simplest flower or simplest fruit or water, it is enough. So one has to understand at the beginning when you follow the path of Bhakti Yoga is that a simplest surrender. Now let me connect this to the emotional culture. A lot of emotion distress, a lot of what we call it as a friction, internal friction or external friction happens because we don't surrender. Surrender not to the person or the situation, surrender to the divinity that my path is there and I'm surrendering, I'm allowing this to happen. I'm allowing, I'm the instrument here, so I'm getting these experiences. That feeling we don't believe. We think that I am the doer. We think that I am the one who is getting this done. It is my duty to do everything perfectly. But I have to understand that I am just an instrument. Nimitta matra bhava savyasachi. Krishna says to Arjuna, you are a nimitta matra, you are just an instrument on this path. Now when you are an instrument on this path, it is your duty to perform perfectly. Why I am telling you all this is because when we take it that I am the doer, I am the who is getting done, I am the one who is doing this project, I am the one who is interacting with people, I am the one who is suffering, I am the one who is in trouble, I am the one who is in pain, I am the one who is in agony. These emotions starts cultivating because there is no sense of surrender. We take it so much in me, I am hurt, I am to be blamed, I am the one, me. It can be in a, me will be in a good, I'm happy, and in positive frame also. It can be in this, and mostly if you see the current generation, in current lifestyle, rather than, let me use the word lifestyle, it is me, which is always the one who is taking a blame, or the next person. So there is always doer, which we see either within me or outside of the picture. But we don't realize that there is someone who is sitting upstairs and he's watching us. You may believe, you may not believe. But when there was a slit experiment, if you have studied physics, you know that when the electron gun, when they, this was a slit experiment done on the silicon foil, where the electrons were projected with the electron gun on the silicon foil. It was seen that the electrons went very randomly. But when they put the sensors next to the electron gun, and they shoot the same electron gun on the silicon foil, the same electrons went in a correct pattern. Even the electrons, now the science is coming to bring the consciousness approach in this. The consciousness is there even the smallest, what we call as anu or sukshma avastha or microcosmic nature, and also it is there in a macrocosmic nature. So when we talk of the surrender, we connect to that consciousness, which is there within us, is there outside. Purnamata, Purnamidam, Purnat, Purnamudachyate. That's where these concepts come from. Now, having said that, we have to understand this concept of surrender, but one has to also understand surrender is never blind. Surrender is never blind. Surrender should uplift you. When you follow the path of devotion, it should uplift you, nor it should drain you. So emotion culturally should be there to uplift you. It should not bring a passiveness in the life. It should not bring a negative approach to it. Hey, what is there? Divine is there to take care of me. Let me just sit and not do work. In Hindi, I believe in Hindi only they have this saying, "Khat pe baith ke Bhagwan chappal phad ke dega." That means you just sit on the bed and God is going to. No, it's not going to happen. One has to understand bhakti always goes with a karma, jnana, and will. These all four paths, they go hand in hand. But bhakti is so much popular because emotions are always close to us. My emotions may not be this exactly with some other person's emotions, but bhakti for me is my individualistic experience. And this individualistic experience is going to connect me to that universal consciousness. When we understand this, then we understand how easy it is to follow the path of Bhakti Yoga. Because then we remove the specks of the rituals and we go beyond the rituals. Many times, unfortunately, we get stuck with the concept of rituals, and then that's where the trouble starts happening. Let me tell you a small story how this concept of ritual can dominate people. There was a house, and in that house, there was some form of the puja, some form of the ritual. And many people were there, and the priest was there, and the priests were there, and they were doing some telling the owner of the house to do those rituals and all. And that was happening. And there was a cat there. In that house, there was a cat, and cat was going here and there, disturbing people. She was trying to jump here and there. So an old lady in the house, she brings a small basket, and she covers that cat with that basket. So cat is confined to one place. Cat is still alive in the basket. And so a young newly married girl in that family sees that the cat is kept in a basket, covered in a basket. So when next time in her house there is a ritual, she brings a cat, she brings a basket, and she keeps a cat covered with the basket. Rituals can be that, where when you don't understand the hidden meaning about it, when you don't technically research and find out the reason to do that particular ritual, the cat and basket scenario can happen. And unfortunately, We don't question these things to our seniors. May not be parents, but any guru or any priest. And that's where we follow blindly. And then it becomes a mechanical procedure. And when there is a mechanical procedure, the devotion factor reduces. Then you get a burden. The same ritual, any kind of a puja or any kind of devotional practice, can be done with the uttermost love, can be done with a lot of joy, can be done with a lot of happiness than just being a mechanical. Even it can be a simple lamp to lit in front of the God. There are people like, if you have been to Tirupati or any kind of a temple, old ancient temples, if you had been, even in Kolhapur Mahalakshmi, they do this, they put the lamps. In Bangalore, there is a beautiful temple of Ragiguda. It's a Maruti temple, Anjaneya temple. And every evening, they switch off all the lights and just the simple lamps are kept in front of that particular deity. And it looks so beautiful, so mesmerizing. You don't need to do any kind of havana, any kind of puja, or just you are connected to divine. Now, this is where you have to understand the rituals. One doesn't have to follow on the path of bhakti blindly, but you test, take the best out of it, and carry for the next generation. Surrender and the ritual. These are the two things which we saw. A surrender can be towards the process of ritual when you understand thoroughly and do it. And if you don't, it's okay. That, as I said, there's a patram pushpam phalam toyam. Basically, it is the surrendering from within, connecting this energy to that energy. When I say this energy to that energy, I remember a quote from Swami Vivekananda's one of the book where he says, a jnani person who is a knowledgeable person knows everything, but he may not have realized everything. But a bhakta may not know everything, may not know scriptures, may not know 700 shlokas of Bhagavad Gita, may not know Narad Bhakti Sutra, may not know any technical grammatical study. But he must have realized much more. He must have realized much more, a true bhakta. Mukha Svadanuvata, Narad Bhakti Sutra says, Mukha Svadanuvata. What is a love? What is that unconditional love? What is that bhakti? A person who cannot talk, if you give him some beautiful, some really nice sweet, and ask him, how was it? Will he be able to explain it? He doesn't have a words. So this devotion, this connection to the divine is that feeling which you cannot confine in the words exactly. It is that pure emotion one experiences on the path. And then what happens? Yoga Sutra said, Tajjapaha tadartha bhavanam. When you connect to that pure consciousness, whichever form you are seeing, you may be seeing Rama, you may see Krishna, you may be seeing Anjaneya or Goddess, or even the Jesus or Buddha, or whichever worship you are doing. That japaha, you connect to that particular energy and you go into that bhavana, you imbibe those qualities. There is in India, all these gurus, I'm telling, again, let me just clarify this purposely, because when I use the word guru, I genuinely talk about the true masters. I'm not going to, please don't bring the picture of these some of these, who are currently unfamously popular. But there are so many good teachers who really tell the good things, and on this path of spirituality, one has to learn to choose between what is good and not good. Because this is not a diversion, but let me tell you, there is one guru, and I'm not going to take anybody's name particularly, so-called guru in India. He predicts if your son is going to pass an exam or not by telling which chutney you have eaten with the samosa. And there is this guru, and his programs are on the television. And there are thousands of followers for him. This is where you have to understand the game of emotion. These people exploit this emotion, and that's why this emotional culturing is necessary, where you realize that where and how much investment of emotion, where you have to have, and when to surrender. A surrender has to have the intellectual aspect, but when you start the process of surrender, intelligence disappears. But one doesn't have to surrender to any kind of a person blindly, or any kind of a guru blindly. So when a guru tells you this, Anjaneya, for example, he's an embodiment of a strength. He's an embodiment of the devotion. He's an embodiment of the knowledge. He's a true yogi. He's a Rudravatara. Now, somebody is sick, somebody is not well. Some of these teachers, they tell that why don't you worship Anjaneya? Or they tell that why don't you do this particular Hanuman Chalisa or Maruti Stotram? There is a concept. If a student is there, they are being asked to worship the Ganesha or the Saraswati, because she is the embodiment of the knowledge, and you are seeker of the knowledge. So why don't you worship that particular deity? If you are seeking for the financial wealth and stability, then Balaji, Vishnu, and Lakshmi. If you're on the path of spirituality, where you are understanding the concept of Vairagya. When I say understanding, that means also you're following, not just mere words, but following the concept of detachment. Then Shiva. So it has been always told, you want to develop a compassion, you want to develop a kindness. The many people, they read from the Bible certain lines, or they understand the message of Jesus, Buddha. On the path of spirituality, when we see, we have to see all this unbiased way, and we have to understand the quality which we are trying to adopt. So the bhakta realizes this very effortlessly, because there is no ego. A jnani will have an ego. Oh, this page, this shloka, this one, they can tell you. But a realized soul, and bhakta, doesn't have to have the scriptural knowledge, but he can connect you to that experience. What Narad Bhakti Sutra says, when you follow the path of bhakti, what happens? Siddho bhavati, amruto bhavati, trupto bhavati. You become a master. Siddha means master. Amruto bhavati. Amruta means then, what we call it as a nectar. Of nectar doesn't mean that, it ideally, Amruta means what? Whatever you experience in the life, you experience it thoroughly, wholeheartedly. You enjoy it. However much it is, you feel the connection to that supreme divine. And that's the Amruta. And Trupto bhavati, contentment. Because if you are not contented, that means what? Whatever you have got in the life, there is no contentment about it. You are complaining. And a bhakta will never complain. Bhakta, the devotee, will be always in that state of contentment. Whatever is there is God's wish, and I'm happy with it. Bhakta will not do an analysis or the logical conclusion about anything, logical analysis of anything. He will just believe. There is a surrender factor. When I come to this aspect, I want to bring this very important understanding here, that it is essential to have this surrender. Even Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that yo yo yam yam tanu bhaktah shraddhayarchitumicchati tasya tasya chalam shraddham tameva vidadharmyaham. The one who worship in whichever form, I connect you to that energy, and you get the fruits of it. You means the devotee get the fruits of it. Whichever. So when you worship, when you surrender, to whom you surrender, it comes with your practice, comes with your clarity. And that clarity comes only and only when you're contented. If you're not contented, there is no clarity in the life, because you're always unsatisfied. You're always finding fault or being restless in what you have. it is essential to have that contentment. And that's where, we use these techniques in the corporate sectors and IT sector, the gratitude notes or gratitude diary. I mean, I understand. I completely, and even, when I deal with this, but I know this very much that everybody has ambitions in the life, everybody has a goals in the life, and everybody wants to progress. The path of progress, path of abundance, path of happiness only comes if you have that gratitude. And the gratitude is the first step towards the surrender. The reason is this, that when you express the gratitude, what happens? You are able to let go the ego. And when you let go the ego, you develop that attitude of the instrument, being an instrument in this path. If you see all the scriptures, many of the stotras, shlokas, at the end there is something called as Falashruti. Or there is always some kind of a stanza which comes as a form of the gratitude or to express that sense of surrender to that deity. In the Shivamanas Puja, it is one of the beautiful sloka, a bit difficult for those who are new in the Sanskritam, but it is very beautiful line at the last comes. Atma tvam girijamati sahacharaha prana sharirat gruham पूजान्ते विषयोपभोग रचना निद्रा समाधि स्थिति संचार पदयो प्रदक्षिण विदोः स्तोत्राणि सर्वागिरो यद् यद् कर्म करोमि तत्तदखिलं शंभो तवाराधनम. Whatever actions I do it as a aradhana, as a what you call it, as a devotion towards the divine. Why I came to this concept? Because on the path of bhakti, one has to understand to let go and do actions as the devotion towards the divine. Now, when I say as the devotion towards the divine, it is necessary to understand a little bit background for it. Because we always think that I'm the one who is getting this done. But always on the bigger picture in the life, if you see particular action, if we don't do, there is always somebody else who will do it. It will be got done by somebody else. There will be always a what you call some substitute in the life where the things will be taken care. And Krishna says to the Arjuna, when you are on the path of bhakti, how you should do the bhakti? You completely contemplate on the divine. He says that, to Arjuna, you completely contemplate on me, means not the Krishna, but the consciousness form of the Krishna. And if it is difficult, what you should do? He says that you establish your mind in the divine, or you remember the divine always. Or he says that if you can't even remember the divine always, whichever action you do, you offer that fruit to the divine. Karma phala tyaga. Karma sangha phala tyaga. The fruits of the action I surrender to the divine. And that's the real and easiest form of the bhakti. When a person grows on the path of spirituality, he understands that when I do this karma sangha phala, karma phala tyaga, or when I let go this fruit of action, what happens? When I let go the fruit of action, I am the doer, I am the one who is getting done. The new karmas I don't create. As all of you might know this, the karmas or the deeds what we are categorized into the kaika karma, vachika karma and manasika karma. The physical actions which we do, mental actions which we do, and speech. These are the three forms of the karma which we do. Apart from that, there is nothing. But when I do kaika karma, vachika karma, and manasika karma, if I surrender this to the divine, all these karmas to the divine, what happens? I balance them out. Because when we don't understand this differentiation, what happens? What I say, but mentally I don't think anything. Corporate sector which we I don't want to offend anyone, which I have seen. I don't like my boss, but I say good morning. How was your trip? How was your? I mean, I really don't like the person, but I'm so what should I say that artificial about this communication that there is a gap between what I say and what I think and what I do. And when this gap starts increasing between what I say, what I think, and what I do, then the personality becomes hollow. And that's where the people go in the stress, when they go in the depression, they experience a lot of negativity, they feel the frustration, anxiousness. Where the cause? Because there is a gap between what you say, what you do, and what you think. What happens because of that? There is emotional blockage. And when there is an emotional blockage, what happens? I'll go to the beginning of this session, what I told you. A simple trigger, that blockage bursts out. The stress comes out. And unfortunately, we are seeing people who think that it is very normal. They think that it is normal. हाँ चिल्लाना वगैरह तो normal है. Are you really? I mean, is it a normal person's nature to scream on the people, have the short bursts, and the anger issues? Do not normalize it. Rather than that, culture those emotions. Work on them. First step, which I told you, by having that contentment, by having that gratitude. Second step is that kindness, unconditionalness. Now, how this unconditional and kindness comes? It's a simple and beautiful thing to say. Shiva Bhave Jiva Seva. Every being, I'm not only talking about human beings, but any animal, any being, any lively creature which I connect with, I see the divine in that creature and I take care of that divine. Again, let me come to the point, as because on the path of bhakti, you will see that I don't believe in the deity, suppose. But then how I can do this bhakti? There are a number of people who are taking care of the stray dogs. There are a number of people who have opened the animal shelters. There are a number of people who take care of the oceans, cleaning of the oceans, the what you call the sea animals, and dolphin or the whales. Many are there. There are a number of people in India, specifically in Himalayan area. There are so many groups who are taking care of the cleaning of the Himalaya. When there was a lockdown, from Chandigarh, one could see the Himalayan range, which in normal days is not possible because of the pollution. So imagine as a humanity how much we are troubling the nature. But then there are people who comes from all sort of the background. No religion is important here. They come from all sort of the background. They are doing it with the devotion, but they are following path of karma. They are doing karma. They are not getting anything out of it. Nothing. They are not getting any money or any kind of prize, or nor they are putting Facebook, social media photos that I clean this and they are tagging hundreds of people. There are many silent workers who are taking care of the nature. There are many people who go to the orphanages, who goes to the elderly houses and take care of those people, not expecting anything, without expecting anything. During the lockdown time in India, I know that many youngsters, they took an initiative to help the elderly people who couldn't get the groceries. Many people, they cooked the food from the houses and gave to the neighbors who are old or ill. Don't you see this is a form of devotion, because you see the divinity, a good quality in that person, and you worship that quality. You take care, you connect to that energy. A bhakti can be in the both form. It can be in the path of idols, worshipping, ritualistic process. Obviously, as I mentioned, the rituals which are relevant with the time. That, see, another thing, many times when you come from the orthodox background, and let me tell you this frankly, this happens that the seniors, when you come from the orthodox background, they tell you, no, you have to do this. There is no questioning about it. We are as a human being, we are blessed with the intelligence. And then that it is a time to utilize the intelligence. whether it is time tested, that particular ritual, is it useful, what is the reason behind it. Nor we should discard everything, nor we should take everything blindly, but we should use that balance of the right brain and left brain. We should use the balance of the analysis and the emotions. And when we have that balance, we are following the path of yoga. Let me come to the last segment here, where I want you to connect to the aspect of unconditional love. When I worship, when I see that quality, I take care of that, I worship that divinity. It may be in the nature, it may be in the deity, or whatever I see. But a lot of a lot of this happens because of the emotion. And when this happens, the emotion is of what? Love. Prema minus kama. Prema means love, minus kama means any expectation or desire. When I remove that kama or desire, then it becomes a bhakti. Prema plus kama, because there is a kama means that there is a desire. That means there is an expectation. And when there is an expectation, you are creating new karma, and then the karma phala comes. And then if the phala is not correct, what you are expecting, then you are in a trouble. Then the anger and frustration and all starts. But when there is a prema and no kama, no desire, just love because I love. I love, I care because I do. That's it. There is no expectation behind it. That is the bhakti. तेरे कांटों से भी प्यार, तेरे फूलों से भी प्यार. In Hindi, there's a beautiful line. But it doesn't mean that I should get, pinched with the thorns always. The bhakti I'm talking about divine, the higher source, not about the human beings. Because there is this, again, when we think of the emotional culture, the important emotion which one has to understand is self-love. How I take care of myself. Not the nurturing ego, but how I worship, how I see. Always it is recommended in the path of yoga, svadhyaya, self-study. A point comes where after every certain days, you should decide and see where you have come from, where you are on the path of spirituality. And that you understand only when you follow the path of self-love, where you understand that, am I getting drained when I follow the path of this bhakti? Because a bhakti should always uplift you, nurture you, make you happy, make you joyful, make you with a full sense of humor, with full sense of joy, full sense of liveliness. That is a path of bhakti. But if you see there is a quality of any kind of anger, frustration, a kind of what you call resentment, any kind of negative quality, that is a time when you should introspect and see, am I doing correctly? Am I getting a guidance correctly? What should I do to improvise that? How I should surrender? How should I seek the answer? Is my method of seeking answer is correct? And then you progress. A bhakti, as I say, one understands with the intelligence. It understands with the heart. But when the exact time of surrender comes, intelligence goes off. And what remains is the connection to that divine energy. A divine energy can be in the form of the idol, cannot be in the form of the idol. Many people, they reach to the state of ecstasy, to that connecting what we call as a trance or samadhi, by just being with the nature. In Mysore, this example I really like to give in my classes. On the Bangalore-Mysore highway, there is this old lady. Last year, she has got a Padma Shri award, Saruti Makkama. Very old lady, she's some 74 or something. She has planted some 7,000 banyan trees. And not only she has planted, but she has taken care, and those trees have become huge. Imagine a single lady, obviously with the help of some people, has planted and taken care of so many trees. She did karma. She is not getting anything out of it. It is not her land and she's growing and getting crop out of it, anything. But she did it with the pure love towards the nature. And not only that, she's taking care of it. There is no condition, there is an unconditional. The emotions one can develop only when you understand this, that whether I'm being unconditional, how I can become unconditional when I'm being kind towards the people and kind towards myself. Then whether I have a sense of surrender. To get that sense of surrender, whether I have a sense of gratitude, and to have that sense of gratitude, whether I'm contented. So it is a journey from contentment to the gratitude, to the surrender, towards the kindness, and towards the what I call it as an unconditional love. And is the easiest path because we all are blessed with the emotions. And when we understand this process, we understand that then there won't be any gap between what I say, what I think, and what I do. And when there is no gap, there is no chance for unnecessary stress, tension, any kind of anxiety, because there is only purity which remains. There is no hidden motive, there is no negativity. And when there is a purity of the heart, connection to the divine is the easiest form. Correct? That's the process of the bhakti. I'll take a pause here. I want to have all of you have this a small meditation experience because let me tell you a background about this. Is one of the meditation which I have uh, prayed and followed in one of the Ramakrishna Math. I believe it is from the Raja Yoga book of Swami Vivekananda. If I get the exact reference, I'll share with you, Ketki. Long ago, we had done it in a Prashanti, and it's a beautiful meditation. And Mohan Jila, he has taken this meditation. And when you told me about the Bhakti Yoga, I always remembered him. You know Mohanji, how he was. And Mohanji, Raghuramji, they taught us the Bhakti Sutras. So let me connect to this meditation. I request all of you to sit straight. It's just a small 5 minutes practice. Keep your back straight and spine straight. Keep your arms on the knees, however comfortable for you. And I just want you to relax your shoulders, relax your neck, and take a deep breath and breathe out. When you inhale, take a deep breath. When you exhale, completely breathe out. When you inhale, observe how the cool air goes inside. When you exhale, observe how warm air goes out. Just few rounds. If your mind is running too much here and there, have a little bit forced breathing, a little bit forced inhalation, a little bit forced exhalation. Some 5 to 6 rounds. When you connect your mind to the breath, visualize a pure golden light is entering in your body with your breath. With every inhalation, this pure light enters from your nostrils, from your nasal passage, and it goes deep within. The light is the purest form of the energy. And this light is spreading throughout your body. The rays of the light, they move from tip of the toes to the top of the head, from top of the head to tip of the fingers, from tip of the fingers to the top of the head. They flow freely, effortlessly. Let them flow. No any strict pattern. Every cell of the body gets connected with that light. Gently shift your awareness towards your heart, the center of the chest where the heart chakra is located. It's also called as anahata. It is very subtle and deep experience where we connect to the heart chakra. There is a physical heart and there is a heart chakra. Visualize a beautiful lotus bud in the heart chakra. And with every breath which you take, the rays of the light reaches to that lotus bud and starts opening every petal, gentle opening of the petal. As every petal starts opening, the lotus in the heart starts blossoming. The connection of the pure divine energy to the heart chakra and the visualizing lotus opening in the heart chakra. Take your time. Go with your own experience. Any blocked emotion, any resistance, any blocked feeling, just let go and let that light remove it effortlessly. Connect to that center of the chest. Connect to that heart chakra. Observe the opening of the lotus. Hridaya Kamala, the lotus of the heart. Bring that pure emotion of unconditional love, unconditional approach towards the self and the universe. And as you connect to that unconditional love, let it spread throughout your body, throughout your system. There is a sense of ease and effortless when it is unconditional love. Be there with yourself for some time. If your mind is playing games, if your mind is distracting you, just ignore it and connect to that pure unconditionalness of the heart. In your mind, consciously with awareness, bring a sankalpa, a positive affirmation. I am blessed. I experience universal love, divine love, and I nourish myself with a divine love. I am blessed. I experience universal love, divine love, and I nourish myself with that divine love. with that purity of the mind, with that unconditionalness of the mind. Take a deep breath and chant one Om for Om. Inhale. Rub your palms. Give a nice massage to the face, neck, chest area, and slowly open your eyes.
Wow.
Thank you, all of you.
That was the brilliant meditation.
That was so nice. That was so nice. The blossom of the lotus within is such a beautiful concept, Omkar. So thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
I
I have
think
been using this technique, and it's a very easy technique to follow. You know, many times we experience in the day-to-day life some block. You know, कि कभी-कभी समझ नहीं आता कि कुछ तो अटका है. You know, कुछ तो बाहर नहीं आ रहा है. You know, some of the days you feel. I highly recommend you to practice this because obviously it will help you to open that internal blockage.
correct.
And it was the easiest way to connect with the divinity, I think, in the form of that light.
Yes, yes. So always.
Yeah.
I think we have got one question. So Santosh, you did say on the chat that you had a question. So can you unmute?
Yeah,
and-
now we will open it to everyone. If you have got any questions, one by one, you can ask your question to Omkar. So we'll start with Santosh, as he has mentioned it before.
So Santosh, can you unmute and ask your question, please?
I'm unmuted now. So, Omkar ji, namaskar.
Namaste. Yes.
Sundar session. I'm going to speak a little bit in Marathi and then the question will come in English, okay?
Yes.
आपण
Thank you.
मला वाटतं त्याच्यात बोलायला पाहिजे आपण ज्ञानेश्वरांच्या
अगदी.
असं म्हटल्यावर तर
अगदी अगदी.
तर आपला अनुभव तर सुंदर ते तुम्ही जे बोललात त्याच्यातून तर खूप काही कळणं तर दुसरी गोष्ट आहे पण त्यातून खूप काही माझी जी समज होती त्याच्यात खूप प्रकाश पडला काही काही गोष्टी म्हणजे समाधी म्हटलं किंवा तुम्ही जे काही एलिमेंट्सवर टच केले. माझा प्रश्न असा आहे ज्ञान मार्ग, योग मार्ग, भक्ती मार्ग आणि दुसरं तर हे मार्ग जे आहेत दर्शनशास्त्रामध्ये आपण जे बोलतो राईट तर ह्या सगळ्यांचा उच्चांक जो आहे तो सच्चित आनंदच आहे राईट म्हणजे ब्रह्मांडचा कॉन्सेप्ट आहे राईट. काही जणांना भक्ती मार्ग पटतो काही जणांना ज्ञान मार्ग. मला भक्ती मार्ग जास्त जमत नाही टू बी ऑनेस्ट विथ यू. माझा ध्यान मार्ग आहे ठीक आहे. पण दोघांचा जर उच्चांक जर तुम्ही घेतला तर भक्ती मार्गामध्ये कसा आहे ज्ञान मार्गामध्ये कसा आहे म्हणजे तो फरक आहे का. जसं तुम्ही म्हणता ना जो मनुष्य सच्चिदानंदला त्याचा उपभोग तो त्या क्षणाला किंवा त्याचा तो एक्सपिरियन्स झाल्यावर त्याला ती समज असली नसली दॅट इज डिफरंट. रिअलायझेशन हॅज नथिंग टू डू विथ नॉलेज. व्हेरी नाईस पॉईंट यू सेड विच आय टोटली अग्री. यू डोंट नीड टू बी नॉलेजेबल टू बी रिअलाइज्ड राईट. तर हा खूप मोठा प्रश्न असू शकतो पण कीप इट शॉर्ट की ज्ञान मार्ग आणि भक्ती मार्ग ह्यात तुम्ही म्हणजे कॅन बी ड्रॉ पॅरलल्स ऑफ सच्चिदानंदापर्यंत ही कारण ते परत एनर्जी सेंटर आहे तुमची चक्रामधूनच ती सगळी ऊर्जा वाहत जाणार आहे राईट. म्हणजे जरी तुम्ही ध्यान मार्ग केला किंवा भक्ती. सो तुमचा काय व्ह्यू आहे नॉट अ क्वेश्चन बट व्हॉट वुड यू शेअर ऑन दॅट काइंड ऑफ थिंग.
It is. Let me answer this in English.
Sure.
It is. One has to understand.
Will you just summarize that question in English
Yes.
so that
Yes.
everyone
Yes.
can
Yes. Yes. So the question, if I take the gist out of it, is this: that there are people who follow the path of knowledge. Some people follow path of bhakti and raja or karma. And can we draw the parallels between them, or is there, do these paths come across? Let me tell you a small story of Shankaracharya. When he was in Varanasi, Kashi, he was on the path of, he saw an old person who was doing continuous Vedadhyayana. And Shankaracharya says to him, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam Mudhamati. one has to understand, like even if you go through the very technical aspect, when we talk about the Kundalini, when we talk about the chakra, the energy flow, the experiences of Samadhi, the levels of Samadhi, even when you reach to the Sabija Savikalpa Samadhi, and when you have to go, when the next and only level which remains is the Nirbija Nirvikalpa, or what you call a Dharma Mega Samadhi, even in that state, there is a surrender. Even there is a Ishvara Pranidhana which comes. If you see the Yoga Sutras Kaivalya Pada, in that he says that, Patanjali says that even in that stage there is a sense of surrender. There is a requirement of the bhakti, because when there is a bhakti, there is no ego. As I was telling that I am the one who is doing, that is not there, even in that subtle aspect. Because then Shankaracharya says that otherwise it becomes like, snake and ladder. You reach to the 90th block, and that karma, that I am the one who is experiencing this Sabija Savikalpa Samadhi, brings you down to the state of 2, again Punarjanma. So these paths, one can follow according to their nature. You like to have a path of jnana or bhakti or karma, we are blessed with that freedom. When we understand what we have learned through the path of jnana, to what we call, even in the jnana, we have something called as nididhyasana, correct? Shravana, manana, and then comes a nididhyasa. So dhyasa, that dhyasa happens only with the sadhana. So again, there is a following of the process, there is a path of sadhana, there is a devotion towards the sadhana. So these paths are all interlinked. So if I'm answering you, that I want to bring this point, initially you may go technically, study of the understanding and all. Realization comes only with the process. Otherwise, one is just a knowledgeable person. Realization, the goal of the knowledge to have that realization, that comes only with the bhakti. Bhakti need not to be, as I said, ritualistic. It is that surrender. Okay, thank you, God, that you gave me this knowledge. Now show me the path of realization. Is it okay, Santosh? Am I making it easy to understand?
Yeah, in the sense, with Dhyana Marga also, when you understand that you are not body, thought, and mind, is when you are basically ultimate consciousness. So yeah, good. I have others to ask. So thanks for that answer, though.
Santosh, just for your information, now I think you have joined the group right time, because from next month we will be starting with Raja Yoga and Jnana Yoga part of Bhagavad Gita.
Fantastic. So we joined yesterday, right? I joined yesterday. So when I heard about Mukherjee, I said it is a must attend. I need to, because anyways I'm into this right now. I'm learning a lot of stuff. So, and it really helps with all these kind of beautiful sessions. So thank you for that. Thank you for the.
Thank you.
Lalit, I think you have got one question.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yes.
For the opportunity. So the question I have, I have spiritual background from my family. I'm not into it completely, but I do believe in it. One of the things I've experienced throughout my life, you touched upon one of the aspects of it regarding when children are growing, how parents treat the children and the stress between them and stuff like that. What I've observed is, as a parent, a lot of times children fail to submit to parents, or they don't take guidance from parents, but the same parent can guide somebody else's child. And this is I'm not talking about my children, but overall I've seen that happening. Do you see any connection with any of this at all?
I know what you're saying, and I agree what you're saying. There are aspects in the many families where I have seen that parents follow certain spiritual path or some guru or some kind of pantha, but the children, their own children, never follow it, or they resist, or they become rebellious about it. I always believe in this particular scenario, it is about the communication gap between the parents and that particular child. When parents say, no, no, because I'm telling you, you do it. When they emphasize it in that way, when a child gives a time, the child rebels. This I have always seen, this is a pattern.
Correct.
Yeah,
So
please.
I'm not specifically talking about spirituality, but anything to do with the child's life. So the child is growing and the parent is trying to give a direction. I mean, that's the role the parent plays. But the child refuses to take direction from that parent. I mean, the child doesn't buy it from the parent, frankly. I mean, but if I go to somebody, I mean, if I go to talk to somebody else's child, then I can have that impression of mine onto the child and the child. So it's not exactly related to spirituality sometimes, but the way of behaving with people and stuff like that, like, you know, giving those basic values to the children. This is what I've observed. And the reason I ask this, because I happened to speak to a guru in India, and what he told that if you start doing Gayatri Mantra, regularly practicing Gayatri Mantra every morning, then you would reach a state where you can put an impression on someone, basically. I mean, so that's why I was slightly confused. Doing Gayatri Mantra and, you know, making a child sort of.
A lot of realization for the children can happen when they see parents are following what they are telling. You know,
right.
A lot of it can happen. A Gayatri Mantra can be a solution to just bring that focus to the parents' mind.
Right.
You know, that person's mind. So Gayatri Mantra will have its own benefit on that person. But unless and until that parent, let me tell you this small story. Ramakrishna, you know, he used to come in, he used to be in Calcutta sometimes, and in his many devotees used to come to meet the Ramakrishna, and a lady came to meet him and told him that my child eats a lot of sweets, and you know, can you please tell him not to eat sweets? So Ramakrishna said, come after some weeks or some 3 months or something, and then I will tell. She said, okay. I mean, he's a Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. So she takes it and she comes after that time. And then Ramakrishna brings that child close to him and says, you know, my dear, you should not eat the sweet. It's not good for you. And she said, this you would have told then only. No? So the Ramakrishna says, because I was the one who was eating sweets. So if I don't follow what I say, this is where I came to that point. What I say, what I do, and what I think. If the children see that gap in the parents, and obviously because you're staying in the house, so they will be seeing it much closely. If they see this gap, so obviously they are going to have their own way of saying no. Sometimes they will just do because of mechanical way, or sometimes they will totally rebel out. So it is the Gayatri Mantra is going to help that person to see if there is a gap between what he see, what he say, what he do, and what he think. If there is a gap,
that perfectly makes sense. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you for that.
I think we have got one more question from Siddharth ji. Omkar, can Bhakti Yoga be part of Karma Yoga? If so, how does one realize it?
It is, these are all integral parts with each other. As I said, as I gave you the examples of these people who are taking care of the nature or animals, they are doing karma, but they are doing that karma yoga with the devotion. There is a total devotion towards that. They want to take care. I have a friend, she lost her own Labrador. And that Labrador was not very old. He was very young. She was very young lab. And this friend of mine was so shaken because she was taking care, not it as a pet, it was like her own daughter. Like she's having a daughter, but the lab was also a daughter for her. So we were worried that she got so depressed, how she will come out of it. And this friend of mine, she made a point that whichever stray dogs she sees, she will take care of them. She'll see that they will go to that adopting agencies. She adopted 3 dogs, the indie dogs, and she's taking care of them. So it became a karma, but because of the devotion towards the animal love, that unconditional love towards her own pet or her own lab. So a karma and bhakti goes, and again, this I always tell in my corporate session. So I want to tell, when you start liking your work, it becomes a devotion. If you're working just because you are earning and you're getting money out of it, then it becomes a burden after some time. But if you really start liking, and that's why you see many of this, I mean, I stay in Bangalore, so many of the software engineers word which I use may not be applicable only for the software engineers, but others also, those who are in the stressful kind of a profession, they divert their energy later after 35, 40 towards some kind of art form. Some become serial photographers, some become adamant travelers, some start food business. Some or other, they want to channelize that blocked energy. So a bhakti and karma, and some, as I said, they take care of these plants. And in Bangalore, there are, who saves the Bangalore gardens, and there are groups who take care of this all garbage system and all. Karma and bhakti then go in hand. But why do we need to wait till to reach to that level? Why can't we do what we do now with the devotion? And that's where the karma phala tyaga comes. That I do my actions at the best and I just surrender. I hope this balances.
I think the sense of doership and enjoyership, if we try to lessen in our each action, the concept of bhakti will come into your every action, into your every karma.
Exactly.
So I hope, Siddharth, your question is well answered.
Is there any more questions? I'm conscious of time as well. Of course, there is so much to discuss and so much to learn from Omkarji here, but it's just we want to ensure that we give everyone an opportunity for asking questions.
Anyone has raised a hand?
No. Is there any questions more lingering? Again, if you have any questions, maybe if you want to think over this session, drop us in our WhatsApp group. And what we will do is make sure that we reach out to Omkarji again, and we will try and give you the answers back. So I'm again, as I said, I'm conscious of time, but thank you so much, Omkarji, for a very nice experiential session in terms of Bhakti yoga and Bhakti movement and relevance of Bhakti movement. I think culturing of emotions was such a good thought. And of course, the balancing of the stress triangle between saying, doing and thinking was again something that we all can go back to our normal lives and think, are we doing what we are saying? And as there was a discussion between our actions and how children see our actions, I think that is one of the very much day-to-day life example of this balancing of the stress triangle. And I think at the end of the day, as Lord Krishna has said, Sarva Dharma Parityajya Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja. I think that is the utmost divinity, and that is the utmost bhakti. So I think thank you so much again. And for this group, we will have our next session starting with Raja Yoga on 2nd Saturday of January. Of course, in due course, we will put out the timings and everything. Yeah. But for today, thank you so much for Omkarji and also for all the participants. It was lovely having you. If we have any questions further, we will connect with you again, Omkarji.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and thank you all.
Thank you for giving your precious time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.